In the long shadow of humanity's past, during the dark era known as the Age of Strife, the one destined to become the Emperor of mankind walked among the ruins of a fractured Earth. He had been there since the beginning, born in the 8th millennium BC, an immortal guardian watching over humanity through the ages. For millennia, he had worked in secret, guiding, nudging, influencing the course of human destiny through countless identities, always from the shadows. But as old night dragged on, the galaxy fractured by warp storms and isolation, he knew that secrecy would no longer suffice. The warp had become a roiling, impassable maelstrom. For over 5,000 standard years, interstellar travel and astropathic communication were all but impossible. Humanity, scattered across the stars, was left alone in its suffering, severed from itself and from hope. Stranded on Terra, a world ravaged by techno-barbarian warlords and savage tribes, the Emperor did not remain idle. Deep beneath the snow-laced peaks of the Himalayan mountains, in hidden gene laboratories lost to time, he turned his brilliance inward, studying the human genome, experimenting and planning. His vision remained unchanged, to unify all of mankind and lead it into a golden age where humanity would take its rightful place among the stars, as other species, like the Eldar, once had. But to do this, he would need more than science. He would need warriors. From his experiments came the first prototypes, genetically engineered super soldiers unlike anything the world had seen. They were the Thunder Warriors, brutal, powerful, and utterly loyal. With these warriors at his side, the Emperor waged the Unification Wars, sweeping across Terra in a storm of steel and fire. One by one, the warlords and scattered nations fell. All were brought beneath a single banner, the Raptor Imperialis. And when the final battle ended, the warrior scientist who had once walked among mortals in disguise revealed his true name, the Emperor of mankind. The unification was complete, but Terra was only the beginning. The stars still called. To conquer the galaxy, the Emperor knew he would need more than soldiers. He would need generals, lords, and beings nearly equal to himself. From his own DNA, he created them, 20 transhuman sons, paragons of war and wisdom. They would be the Primarchs, destined to lead humanity into its next great age. But the warp was watching. The ruinous powers of chaos, sensing the threat to their domain over mortal souls, struck. Slipping past the arcane wards surrounding the Emperor's laboratories, they cast the still-forming Primarchs into the void, scattering them across distant human-settled worlds. Some would be corrupted. All would be changed. The Emperor, undeterred, adapted. He took what remained of their genetic material and used it to create thousands of sets of gene seed. Each contained 19 unique organs implanted within adolescent boys. These organs would transform them into transhuman warriors, the Astartes, the Space Marines. From these, he forged 20 legions, each crafted in the image of a lost sun, raised from the unified peoples of Terra. They became the sword of the new Imperium. Then, a shift in the stars. In the wake of the fall of the Eldar, the Chaos God Slanesh was born. With its terrible birth, the galaxy's long-entrenched warp storms dissipated. The void cleared. The stars opened. And the Great Crusade would soon begin. But before the Emperor could expand, he would first need peace closer to home. One great power still stood apart. Mars, home of the Mechanicum, whose tech priests worshipped the machine god and ruled with deep suspicion of Terra. The Emperor offered alliance, not war. In exchange for knowledge and the cooperation of his Space Marines, he gave them a new symbol, the Aquila, the two-headed eagle, and sealed the alliance that would become the foundation of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Though he held disdain for their rituals and cybernetic dependence, the Emperor saw necessity. He would need the manufactoria, the relics, and the industrial might of Mars to carry the Great Crusade forward. The tech priests, in turn, believed they had seen their prophesied savior, the Omnissiah, a living avatar of the machine god. To them, the Emperor was a being of perfect reason and science, a divine figure whose coming marked a new era for Mars. And thus together, they lit the flame of a new empire, the Imperium of Man. As the warp storm subsided at last, and the stars were made visible once more, the Emperor's gaze turned outward, across the endless void. He had unified Terra beneath a single banner. He had forged alliances with Mars and reclaimed ancient technologies long thought lost. Now the time had come for mankind to reclaim its birthright among the stars. Thus began the Great Crusade, the grandest, most ambitious military campaign in human history. To carry the light of the Imperium from one star to the next, the Emperor's forces required more than strength. They needed ships, countless thousands of warp-capable vessels, each one bearing Astartes legions and millions of Imperial army soldiers into the void. No two fleets were alike. Some vessels burned bright and brief, lasting only months before succumbing to wear or war. Others endured, were forged, revered, and replicated for decades to come. The earliest voidcraft were constructed above Terra, later joined by the shipyards of Mars and the immense ringworks of Saturn. Then came Voss, Grulgarad, Loren, Cypra Mundi, each becoming a beacon of shipbuilding prowess, each swelling the Imperium's might. But it was not conquest alone that carried the crusade forward. It was curiosity, vision, the will to rediscover the long-lost children of Earth. Ranging far ahead of the vast expeditionary fleets were bold pioneers, independent captains known as the Rogue Traders Militant. Many were once rulers, defeated in the Unification Wars, or offered clemency if they bent the knee. Some refused and perished. Others swore fealty to the Emperor and were granted a sacred warrant of trade. They sailed into the unknown, their fleets a patchwork of salvaged vessels. Some Imperial, others Xenos. Forbidden to return to Terra, they became scouts and sacrifices both. Alone in the dark, they mapped the stars and tested the strength of alien civilizations, knowing aid would not come should they fall. Many vanished. Some were destroyed. Others became legends. And a precious few lit the path for the Emperor's sons to follow. As the Imperium expanded, it recovered wonders once thought lost to time. Some ships like the Phalanx, the Mirabilis, and the Terminus Est were unique, irreplaceable treasures. Others were built in greater numbers, their forms molded to the needs of their masters. The ships of the Astartes were unrelenting juggernauts, forged to survive planetary invasions. Raven Guard vessels shrouded in sable, Blood Angel ships radiant in crimson and gold. The Iron Warriors, cold, brutal, and unadorned. Alongside them, the vast Armada Imperialis swept the stars. Grand battleships, their flanks alive with broadsides. Sleek destroyers, swift and lethal. Watchful frigates. Endless convoys of transports, forge vessels, and star forts. All born from the might of Mars and the will of the Emperor. Even with starships by the thousands, the Crusade was slow at first. The Emperor had no access to the Primarch's genomes, and without them, the creation of new Astartes was agonizingly slow. Every gene seed had to come directly from him, for purity, for precision. There could be no room for mutation, no risk of imperfection. But fate would not keep father and sons apart forever. Not long after the Crusade began, the Emperor's flagship fleet, the Principia Imperialis, reached the desolate mining world of Chthonia. There, he found his first lost son, Horus. The bond between them was immediate and unbreakable. They fought side by side, saved each other's lives, and shared a love deeper than that of warlords or kings. Horus took command of the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves, and began recruiting from his own home world. With access to the Primarch's genome, Space Marine production accelerated dramatically, and the Crusade surged forward. World after world was brought into Imperial compliance. some through diplomacy, others through conquest. Each was taught the imperial truth, the guiding philosophy of the new Imperium. It rejected all gods and superstition. It embraced only reason and unity through the lens of science and progress. Though the Emperor detested war, he understood its necessity. The galaxy was harsh, and mankind could not afford to be divided. 30 Terran years later, another son was found, Leman Russ, the Wolf King of Fenris. Though Horus welcomed the discovery, he quietly longed to remain the Emperor's favored child. In time, all the Primarchs were discovered, each reclaimed from a world where the warp had flung them. Each given command of the legion made from their own gene seed. The order in which they were found is unclear in the records, but what is known is this. Horus came first, Alpharius last. Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists was the 7th. Lionel Johnson was found upon Caliban after Russ had already been brought home. Magnus the Red was discovered on Prospero before Lorgar welcomed the Emperor to Colchis. Angron the Furious was rescued reluctantly from Nuceria after the recovery of Perturabo from Olympia. With each new world brought into the fold, the Crusade grew. More ships, more warriors, more resources. And with each Primarch recovered, the time needed to forge a new Space Marine decreased. At the height of the Crusade, a new Astartes could be born and battle-ready in just one standard year. But speed comes with a price. Defects crept in, flaws in body, mind, and spirit. Yet the need for soldiers was great, and the forge never slept. By the dawn of the 31st millennium, some 2 centuries after the Great Crusade began, vast swaths of the galaxy had been brought under the rule of the Emperor of mankind. It was a new golden age, or so it seemed. The dream of unity was taking shape, but deep in the darkness of the warp, something stirred, and fate was not yet finished with the Emperor's sons. During the height of the Great Crusade, the Emperor's forces spread across the stars like great rivers of fire and steel, organized into vast celestial formations known as expeditionary fleets. It began with only one, the Principia Imperialis, led by the Emperor himself. But as humanity's reach extended ever outward, the number of those fleets grew. Trusted generals were elevated to high command, and the stars they touched were marked forever by their passage. The Emperor, having reunited with his sons, soon divided the effort among 3 titanic thrusts through the galaxy. Horus, Pharismanus, and the Emperor himself each took command of one great vector of expansion. To track their journey and support their movements, the War Council assigned a number to every fleet. By the early 31st millennium, after over 200 standard years of campaigning, no fewer than 4,287 primary expeditionary fleets were engaged in the work of conquest and compliance. Accompanying them were over 60,000 secondary deployment groups, tasked with garrison, stabilization, and enforcement. Still more, 372 fleets in total were resupplying, refitting, or gathering in hub systems like Sol before returning to the front. Each fleet bore a designation, but these numbers were more than mere records. Some became symbols woven into the myths of the Crusade itself, associated forever with the Primarchs who led them, or the victories that they achieved. And when a fleet brought a world into the fold, that planet's name often echoed its conqueror's number. One such example was the world once called 6319, the 19th planet subdued by Horus's 63rd Expeditionary Fleet. In this way, the Administratum could trace the path of conquest, planet by planet, battle by battle, through the stars. Though many of the original fleets were assembled by the Mechanicum in orbit over Terra and Mars, by the peak of the Crusade, they were spread across the Milky Way, fulfilling the Emperor's dream of a united species beneath one golden banner. They carried a mandate to bring every human world into the Imperium, peacefully if possible, by force when necessary. And wherever alien empires challenged humanity's ascendancy, they were met with fire and extermination. Few Xenos races survived these wars. For most, the Imperium's answer was extinction. But the fleets also had another purpose. Where once the galaxy had been scarred by the anarchy of the Age of Strife, they now scouted unknown frontiers, seeking new worlds, fresh resources, and untouched corners of the stars to feed the growing needs of mankind. Though the Emperor hoped that many human worlds would welcome reunification, he was no fool. Resistance was expected, and so every expeditionary fleet was a military armada, commanded by a Lord Commander of the Imperial Army, supported by the ships of the Armada Imperialis, and steered through the void by a master of the fleet. Each Primarch, once found, was granted command of a major expeditionary fleet, colossal armadas centered around the main body of their Space Marine Legion, bolstered by Imperial Army regiments and Mechanicum support. These rare formations spearheaded deep thrusts into unknown space, striking first at worlds too dangerous or too entrenched for diplomacy alone. Behind them came smaller fleets, less heavily armed but no less vital. These follow-up groups handled stabilization and enforcement on newly compliant worlds, ensuring that each conquest endured beyond the sound of battle. Sometimes, the Primarch would dispatch a detachment of Astartes to accompany one of these lesser fleets, bringing the Emperor's Angels of Death where none had expected them. In such cases, the ranking Space Marine took supreme command. For during the Great Crusade, no mortal, regardless of rank, could outrank an Astartes on the field. This is how the stars were won, fleet by fleet, world by world. Though it brought unity to the scattered stars of humanity, the Great Crusade was not won by diplomacy alone. It ended wars between nations. It broke the chains of superstition and cast down the tyrants who ruled in ignorance. It freed billions from the cruelty of Xenos dominion. In its wake, there came peace and truth. But the light of reason came at a price, paid not only in blood, but in silence, in secrecy, and sometimes in sorrow. From the very beginning, the Emperor had known illumination would not be given. It would have to be taken. The Pax Imperialis, the dream of peace across the stars, was built by war. For every world brought to heal through banners and oaths, another was brought by bolter and flame. And though the legions of the Astartes stood proudly in the light, others worked in the shadows. Assassin temples, silent agents, and the annihilation protocols were whispers in the dark, unknown to most. Forbidden weapons wielded only by the chosen few. Tools of the Sigillite, Malcador, and secret instruments of the Emperor's will. These were not the noble wars sung in triumph, but they were the wars that secured the dream. As the Crusade expanded across the galaxy, it also began to splinter. Hundreds of expeditionary fleets spread ever outward, and with them, the Primarchs, his sons, drifted further from their father, and in that distance brought disconnect. The Night Lords and World Eaters began to leave atrocities in their wake. The Thousand Sons pursued knowledge beyond the boundaries of the Emperor's design, falling into sorcery through the whispers of Tzeentch. And the Word-bearers, who saw the Emperor as a god, were devastated when he rejected their worship, clinging instead to the atheist imperial truth that denied all divinity. The Imperial army, made of ordinary humans, supported the legions, guarding the worlds that had bent the knee. Many of these soldiers were genetically tailored, descendants of the Unification Wars, bred for strength and obedience. But while they held the line, the Astartes pushed ever forward. And with each passing year, troubling change began to take root. and more. The Legion spoke not of service to the Emperor, but of loyalty to their primarchs, their living gods of war, their brothers, their fathers. When the Emperor departed from the Crusade, following the triumph at Olenor, leaving Horus to command as War Master, that growing rift only widened. From Terra, the Emperor focused on a secret task, one he did not share with Horus. Beneath the surface of Terra lay an ancient device, a relic from the distant past, the Golden Throne. Using it, the Emperor hoped to open the webway of the Eldar, an ancient network of hidden paths through the warp. If he succeeded, all human worlds could be connected instantaneously, ending the reliance on psychers for navigation and communication. No more warp storms, no more risk, no more need for warp travel at all. It would be his gift to mankind, a new golden age. A civilization not bound by fleets and distance, but by thought and purpose. But he told no one. And Horus, once his most trusted son, felt the cold of that silence. He had been given command of the Crusade. He had won great victories, and now he was left behind, passed over, kept in the dark. While some brothers accepted his promotion, others, Angron, Kurz, and Perturabo, bristled with resentment. The legions began to whisper. Some believed the Emperor would disband them when the Crusade was finished. That the Astartes, the very instruments of mankind's ascension, would be set aside. That faceless bureaucrats on Terra would inherit what the legions had bled to build. And in the shadows of those thoughts, chaos waited. On the moon of Davin, Horus led a campaign against undead forces tainted by Nurgle. There, he was struck by the blade of the Anathame, a chaos weapon steeped in corruption. Even his transhuman biology could not withstand the blade's rot. Desperate, his warriors entrusted him to the Serpent Lodge, a cult of word-bearers and chaos sorcerers. Led by Erebus, they did not heal Horus. They broke him. They cast his mind into the warp, where Erebus showed him visions of a future where the Emperor was worshipped as a god, surrounded by cathedrals and millions of pilgrims. It was a future Horus found intolerable. When he awoke, Horus was changed. The Chaos Gods had made their offer. Horus had accepted. And from that moment onward, the heresy had begun.